Good evening, fellow intuitive types. Something's been running around my head for a little while, and wow, this screen is dark. I look like I'm one of those witness protection guys talking anonymously. No, well. Uh, Something's been going around my head lately, given my current situation and some of the things in my past, and some of the stories that I've know from people I've known over the years, and from some of the things you subscribers post in the comments. People are curious about my thoughts on what to do if you're in an abusive situation and after you get out of it, how to recover. So I'm going to get into that. Please note, I am not a psychological professional or medical professional beyond the capabilities of an EMT. So beyond that, I am not a medical professional, and I would suggest that if you feel you need help, or if people around you who know you well have noticed change in your behavior, I would suggest that you seek treatment. Some people in the INFJ and the anti-narcissism community are not big fans of therapy. That's probably, in my opinion, because they didn't seek out the right therapist. Take your time. Specifically, if you're going for narcissistic abuse, histrionic, borderline, if you were a victim of someone like that, make sure your therapist is someone who is well versed in cluster B personality disorders, and make sure that this therapist is in no way connected to your abuser. So not like their friend from high school or their old drinking buddy, where they would have any sort of bias. Because a lot of times, abusers, abusers of narcissistic abuse, borderline personality disorder, a lot of them are usually prominent people in the community, or very wealthy, and people will tend to defend them just because of their status in that small enclosed groups, like the town you live in or your industry, things like that. So you want to make sure to avoid that sort of bias. And first thing I would say for getting away from narcissistic abuse, and it's the most important, and you'll hear it from just about everybody, is if you can, go no contact. Get the narcissist out of your life. Cut off their supply. Do not continue to live in that abusive environment. If that's not possible, go low contact, where you deal with your abuser as little as possible. That would probably be the most logical. If that person's like an ex-wife or husband whom you have kids with, you minimize your contact with the person, and use the gray rock technique. Don't reveal any personal information or emotions about yourself to that person, because they'll use it against you or potentially start stalking you. Make sure you're safe. If you're dealing with a person who's potentially a stalker who you feel is going to show up at your home, make sure you're ready for that. So go to law enforcement, seek restraining orders, worst case, and do it legally as it is where you live, but make sure if that person does break into your home, you're prepared to defend yourself in some way. If you can legally get a firearm and you're comfortable with that, that's certainly something to look into. I'm not going to tell you one way or the other to get a gun. The only thing on that matter I will say is, if you're considering legally getting a handgun to keep in your nightstand and you're not really into guns, as many people aren't, including myself, make sure you get one that you can handle and one that doesn't require a lot of maintenance. Like if you just want like a, just in case gun for home defense, I would highly recommend you get a revolver over a pistol. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and you can watch videos on YouTube for it. But it's a much simpler gun, and there's a lot less to go wrong with it, and pretty much anybody, as long as you can pull a trigger, can operate a revolver. But again, that's if it's legal where you're at and you feel comfortable doing it. Aside from that, if you can relocate somewhere where you do feel safe, either with family or a close friend, you can look into doing that if that's feasible. If that's not, and you don't feel comfortable with a firearm, I would suggest you have something in your home if you feel like someone's going to show up to ensure your safety, whether that's an alarm system or, some sort of non-lethal defense option like a taser or pepper spray, which those two I believe are legal just about everywhere as long as you're 18 years old. Don't quote me on that because I know that's how it is in the United States, but I don't know the laws regarding tasers and pepper spray in other parts of the world like Ireland or the United Kingdom or Australia or Canada. So look up your local laws, make sure you're doing everything legally. Make people aware of this, like neighbors or other people that you see on a regular basis that you fear this person, this abuser is trying to stalk you or break into your home. That's one of the biggest things with narcissistic abusers and getting over the abuse. I found, and this is my opinion, is to go public with what happened to you. Let people know what happened to you. Because as I said, these abusers a lot of times have this, mask, and they fool a lot of people in their life. Like particularly as I said, if they have money or power of any kind. But the thing they fear the most is for that mask to be ripped off. And I said it before. So if you are brave enough to tell the truth about what happened to you, that not only will potentially cause less abuse for you, but think of it this way, my fellow INFJ, ENFJ types, this is big for us. We don't like to see people suffer. So as difficult and painful as it may be for you to tell your story and to have that truth out there, and you may feel at times that you don't want to say it because you're ashamed of what you let happen to you. If you can find the strength to tell your story, then that'll probably greatly reduce the chances of there being any other victims by this person. Because while people like this rarely, if ever, change, they fear that mask being ripped off. They fear people being able to see them for what they really are and really knowing what they're all about and what they're capable of and what they've done to people. And they deserve that. If they committed these acts of abuse, they deserve to be looked upon for the person they really are. And I know it seems scary that people won't believe you, but a lot of times they will. You'll let your truth out, and then they'll put together pieces in their heads of the puzzle, like things that they've seen over the years or things that didn't quite make sense, or they'll start catching this person in lies, and that'll rip that mask right off. And the abuser will have to go through the rest of their time with everybody knowing exactly who they are and what they've done. And the narcissist will lose what they value the most, that fake facade that they have, that everybody loves them or that they're so great. And also, the ability to gain narcissistic supply. I understand it's a tall order. I had quite a bit of difficulty of telling my story on the news in the Washington, D.C. area. I mean, I knew it needed to be done, and I wanted to do it not just for myself, but to ensure that nobody else had to go through what I went through at the academy, but also to try to stop the retaliation that others were facing in the department for telling the truth, for speaking out about what happened to me and others. And as convinced as I was that it was the right thing, I'll be honest, it was really terrifying when I'm being mic'd up by the news crew and sitting in front of that news camera. I'm not the type to, as most INFJs are, to be the center of attention. And it's like, whoa, why is there a fancy news camera pointing at me? It's like, it's not me. I don't want to be in the spotlight. It's like I was never even in like a school play or anything. It's like I was the stage crew guy. How about you go in front of the camera and I'll hold the camera? It's like suddenly, even though I hated high school, that was a feeling like, all of a sudden I want to hold the camera. I feel nostalgic for my high school stage crew years for the first time ever. Man, this is terrifying. But I did feel a lot better once it was over, once it aired, and the positive reception that it got. And again, if you haven't seen it, My media appearance has the link to the actual news site and to the video there. If you are in Europe, apparently that is not accessible to you, so I've posted in poor quality the uh, the news report on this channel as well as in addition to a few follow-ups. So another big one is what happens to us, say, after we get out of the abusive environment. Well, to put it plainly, we're going to be messed up. We're going to be more withdrawn. Uh, we're going to be on edge all the time. We're going to be angry at ourselves for letting it go on as long as we did. Some shame for letting, for not standing up for ourselves sooner. And that's largely due to how you normalize things. Like, if you're in an abusive relationship, as it progressively gets worse, you keep trying to convince yourself that that person truly loves you, or this isn't who they really are. Or in a work situation, as I did, I kept telling myself, oh, this isn't going to last forever. As they said, everybody goes to pay their dues. It is the way it is. And this is for my dream job. I've wanted it for half my life. I can tough this out for a few more months. But things never change. And the saddest thing is people are complicit and people are enablers. But it's very empowering for you to be the one to tell your story, for you to be the one who exposes your abuser. And it's also a great feeling when, if you kick the door open, say like you're the first to blow the whistle on a specific abuser, and others start to come forward and tell their story and reveal that it was a pattern of behavior for the person in question, you know, that really lets the truth out. And when enough people come forward, that's how change happens. Only when enough people are willing to talk about what they went through. And the same is true in a narcissistic family. I find this particularly true amongst narcissistic baby boomers, is they all enable each other. They all back up their narcissistic bullshit with I just know logic. Like, they'll just completely pull something out of their ass and tell you how you're wrong and they're right. Call them out. Call them out. That's what you have to do. Call them out. Make sure if it's at like a big family function, that narcissist is not going to know what to say if you call out I just know logic and you say, well, how do you just know? Well, I just do. But how do you have that knowledge? And I've done it when got them to the point where, like, well, I'm a baby boomer. I'm like, so you have superior intellect and abilities to see sight beyond sight simply because the year you were born? Is that what you're telling me? And they will shut down. They will shut down because they will just keep lying and sound more and more ridiculous and get to the point where they're not going to be able to use their bravado, and everybody, put it plainly, is going to know they're full of shit, and they will shut down. That'll cause them narcissistic injury. And it's a way to get it to stop, because in situations like that, if you cause a narcissistic injury like that to a narcissist in your family, they're going to avoid you because they're going to know from then on that you will call them out, that you will speak the truth about them, particularly if you have, like, quote, dirty laundry on them and you can air their dirty laundry. They fear that. They fear their secrets coming out, because they'll lose all that admiration and pseudo respect that they feel they have. And if they know that you're willing to say anything, and if it's true, and especially if you can back it up, that terrifies them. You know, I'm not saying it's going to work in every instance, but it's been my experience and experience of others that usually works in that situation. Again, healing's going to take time. Just because you get out, you have to understand, just because you get out of an abusive environment, you're not going to be back to normal in a couple days. That abuse, in a lot of cases, for most people, went on months or years. You need time to process all that and return to some semblance of normal, and to make sense. Because once you get out of an abusive environment, so many memories that you had repressed come back, and your emotions at those times come back. Because a lot of times, especially for us INFJs and ENFJs to a slightly lesser degree, when we're in a situation like that, we'll dissociate out of it. Like, we'll go numb, we'll go away in our heads when it's going on and not process what was happening to us at that time. And when you're out of that environment, particularly if you're in hermit mode, as INFJs do, it's all going to be spinning around your head. And you know, those emotions will break through your wall, and then you'll have to deal with them. You'll be sitting alone, just thinking, and it'll just hit you out of nowhere, and more memories will come back, and more patterns of abuse will be evident, and you have to get that out. You have to go to somebody you trust, and or a mental health professional who can help sort that through. It'll certainly speed up your recovery process, in my opinion. So, this has just been a brief overview of how to recover once you're out of an abusive environment, particularly if you're an INFJ or an ENFJ, like most of the people on this channel. Again, most important is to get out of that environment. Get out of that environment to not undergo further abuse. And always remember that if you're being abused, no matter what anybody says, it's not your fault. Don't believe it's your fault just because somebody's rich or somebody's powerful or they're a member of the old boys club or who their grandfather was. Those individual people are responsible for their actions. Their bank account does not excuse it. If they're famous, their fame does not excuse it. And being that every person's responsible for their own actions, somebody doesn't get a free pass just because their grandfather may have been a great man who did great things 50 years ago. The grandson is not the grandfather, and vice versa. Please like and subscribe to keep growing this channel, and we'll see if all of us on this channel can help more people realize some facts about INFJs and ENFJs, and also some facts about narcissistic abuse. Thank you for taking the time to view this, and I'll catch you next time.